Alright, I also bought an air cleaner that doesn't seem to fit. This, I would think, needs to be over here where the distributor is. And, you know, that's hitting the distributor, so it's definitely not in the right place. But the air tube is on this side. That don't make any sense. Anyway, I tried to get a air cleaner. But if I have to just stick that on there and plug some holes to make it work, just to make it look legit for inspection, that's what I'll stick on there, just temporary. Alright, my next goal is going to figure out how to put this back on, the AC. Bolt it, assembly, put the belts, all that back on, make them fit, hook them on here in the right spot. Looks like there's a couple brackets. Bracket under here, I have a bracket here for the maybe the alternator. I need to sort that out, figure out where they go. It looks like a bracket of some sort should go right here. Definitely not it. Need some sort of picture book. There's a bracket here. There was a bracket hanging from underneath, which was not attached to the headers, I don't think. I don't know if that's factory or aftermarket to go with the headers. And I have this weird one, and then I have this weird one. I don't know what to think about this, but the problem is, this thing literally weighs 100 pounds. I can't even hold it up to put the bolts on it. So if I could hold it and somebody test the bolts, it would be fine. But for me to hold it, I can only do one or the other. It literally weighs 100 pounds. It's dumb. This is so heavy. These are so short that I decided to disconnect this. Didn't have pressure in it, just a tiny bit. You can see the oil spray. So it did have a tiny bit of pressure, but not enough. This is some weird 14 bolt. So need to make sure you don't lose this. Got a screen. Interesting. So basically, I don't believe that bracket works there anymore, because I think they bought that to fit with the headers. And I have this strange bracket that I don't know where it goes. So there's that sucker out of there. I think this, thought it went there for a support, but obviously that does not fit there. But that's the way this bracket is fitting. It's like off. So I'm not sure. It looks like it's the wrong bracket, because I can see now that it's not even connected. What is going on here? So, not sure what the story is with that, because they did not bolt that, so this may not even be the correct bracket. Or if there was a factory bolt, so they got an aftermarket intake, so it's missing the bolt hole for the AC bracket. So again, some things are wrong, some things are going. I'm gonna have to sort something out if I want to use this same lug of lug. Because this thing was so heavy, I kept putting my arm over here to support that, and this windshield washer thing, it's like got a scum pond going on in there, so that has cratered to nothing. I don't understand all this vacuum. I want to get rid of most of that. I'm sure it had some purpose back in the day, but me, it's just a gabagoo, a mess. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do to resolve modernizing that and getting rid of the stuff that it really doesn't need. It needs some sort of gas tank vent, which comes up here and then vents back up into the carburetor somehow. So Not sure what to do about that, so things to dream about. Alright, I've discovered a few things. This bracket has moved and it's no longer lined up, so that's why this isn't fitting. Now I'm pretty sure that this goes here, but because that bracket might have moved, I don't know. But all I know right now is that isn't in the right place, so I need to loosen that one so I can put that bracket back. So step one, I have these two matching bolts, so I'm assuming these are the ones that belong here. So that was a 9/16, so I'm going to put this bracket back and permanently reattach that, because that is what is adjusting the power steering. Okay, now what they had, this goes here for sure and bolts to that manifold. So I'm going to have to make that work. I'm going to have to position this, even if I got to get the spreader, and make this work, because what they had in there was a spacer on the headers. So that makes sense. So I'm going to put that permanently back and keep that bracket on there, because even if you don't have the AC, you need that for the power steering. So that's going to be part of the bracket system, even if I don't put this AC, which I'm working towards putting the AC back for now. Figure out what to do with all this mess later. Now, to avoid this not being straight, what I don't like is the threads are too short now, so I know I need a longer bolt in there because all this is taking up more space. So I had 2.5 instead of 2 1/4, so I'm going to have to do that. What I don't like is I can physically see this thing not straight. So I am going to go ahead and see if I can mount that AC back on here, because the AC goes towards the front. That sits on there. That will help hold that on there. And hopefully that will be in a correct position. Otherwise, I'm just going to loosen that and make it work and see how lined up all this is. It looks like it has one belt, and that definitely doesn't look very true to me. Of course, it's hard telling with the bent thing, but I'm going to try that on there next. Alright, going for the test fit. Got this wired up so don't keep getting in my way. A bunch of crap down here. It needs to be wired up out of the way. Anywho, for now, going to see if that will fit here, here, and here. Because I basically have the bolt for that. It's even got some orange paint on it. So I believe that goes there. The two nuts for this part, not sure that that goes there, but let's give this a try. Now I can't film that and hold it, but with that in that bracket, these two line up pretty good with this. So I'm going to bolt it together. Alright, this really isn't fitting true, and the problem that I'm having now is this lower bracket is off enough to not get that bolt in there. So I really want to work on taking the air conditioning back off and figuring out why that won't align. Alright, and there's your answer. In order for that to be flush, that needs some sort of spacer, because that, I could tell, was wonky even when I put it on there. So definitely have to take your time, figure out what the problems are. Now I could put that lower bolt in and get a spacer to work with this. So whatever spacers that needs to fit in there is what it needs to have. So this one had a spacer. I'm gonna have to get some washers and a long bolt, fix that. Okay, now thinking about this, what this had was the stub like that, where it's a stud in there with a piece sticking out, but we'll just put a longer bolt with spacers. It'll be just fine. Also, looking at that, now I know that's gonna get tight and swing that way, but obviously probably going to need a spacer or two. So we're going to have to figure out the thickness so that this is all true and straight and doesn't throw belts, because I can see right now it's wonky, but I think if you took all that slack out of there, you'd have a problem. So I need to get this square and then work on the spacing of this, or no spacing, whatever it needs. So I need a longer bolt and spacers. Well, this is a 3-inch bolt. Got what I believe to work as a spacer. I'm going to tighten down that, see how I feel about this, and then we'll work on the space on that. Okay, definitely a problem. There's still space, and that bottomed out. I could tell that bottomed out. So I'm going to have to put a few more washers on this side to take up, or go buy another one of these, a nut or something on this side, because they don't sell a 2 3/4. They sell 2 1/2 and 3. 2 1/2 is too short, 3 is too long. So I could cut this bolt. That may be my next option, just to cut 1/4 of an inch off of it. But for now, that's good enough to test that piece. Alright, I feel that's pretty ugly. And in fact, I feel like that's probably too much. Could take 1 or 2 out. But for now, I'm leaving it. That's made this super straight. So now I need to decide how much I'm pulling on this. So I am going to guess, can't see it. I'm going to guess 2 washers. So I'm going to take that out, put 2 washers in there and tighten it up. Now I had the 2 washers in between these, but when I was looking at it, just visually, did not look right. So I went without the spacers, assuming that this is in pretty close to where it needs to be. So theoretically, I should be able to put the compressor back on and see where it sits. I did not tighten that, so let me loosen that back up and tighten that belt. Alright, good times. I think this is pretty legit now. All we have is AC belt. Theoretically, this goes here, but as you can see, those should line up straight. So basically, this bracket was made for headers, and the factory bracket is gone. So you'd either have to shorten this bracket to match or buy the correct bracket. But for now, I'm just going to hang that back up and move on. Now, that ain't going to fly long term, but I learned a lot about how this is all supposed to go together with that bracket under there. Now I definitely needs that pivot, or this goes wonky. I'm going to have to find a factory AC bracket, hopefully at a junkyard from a pickup truck or something, or cut that one and make it shorter, make it work. And here's what's funny, this is the correct header bolt for this. So this should have went in there, and then that would have been the stud for the AC. Theoretically, this would have been the correct space for that. Well, I may put that back on there now that I know what that belongs to. All right, back over here working on the AC, even though I'm theoretically fairly happy with this. I really feel like that back section needed a bolt, a brace. So I went on eBay and got this bracket, which is really weird because I'm not understanding the shape or which direction it goes. From what I believe, it goes on like that with a spacer. Well, you don't get the spacer, so I'm a little confused. I'd like to put this back on, which goes without that spacer because that spacer belonged to this. So now that you're not using that bracket, you need to put this factory bolt back. Have two mystery items, not sure where I took them off from. I have the battery tray, my mini spray booth. So I have all the bolts for the battery tray, gonna grease them up, put them back. And then when people are up at the house, I can get to the battery, the keys, and my goal is to fix that starter too, that little thing on the starter, the little wire. I'll try to get all this going. First thing first, put that battery tray back. All right, got the battery tray in. I got the wire drilled on the starter underneath the other side. So I'm going to take this back off, and I'm getting rid of that because I can't stand it. It's disgusting. It's a thing full of goo, and I just want it out of there. It looks like there's a screw. Maybe I'll keep that top piece. Maybe I'll keep the bracket. I don't know. It's just, I want it out of there for it's just, you know, it needs to be a smaller reservoir, I believe. I mean, it's pretty small as it is, but I don't know if that's universal or the correct one. We'll figure that out too. All right, going to take off this nasty reservoir, and I'm in here and nothing fits these screws. So these screws are a 10, and the fender attaching screws are half. This car is just that transition of the wonky, like, this was the frustrating era of when they started switching to metric and all you had was the American set. Thank goodness we have both. All right, so able to get that nasty thing out of there. Kept that top just in case I need it. Use the pins to hold that on there, but man, those are Sharpies, man. Somebody's gonna get gouged on those. Anyhow, that gets rid of that. So I'm gonna go back to working on the AC. So it looks pretty complicated, especially when you have all these bolts everywhere. It just makes you way overthink what you need to do. So basically, there is going to be a bolt here going into this bracket that's off the car. So that's my goal, is to put that piece back on there if I can. You have a swivel lock, two of those, and you have one bolt, right? It's a nut, and it's right here. So that's got to come off. So it's really only two supports and two swivels that lock. So I'm going to take those three off, and that'll loosen this AC and get it out of the way. Now if you couldn't take this off, that would be a big pain because it makes it really rigid and you can't move it out of the way. Mine's old, broken, and didn't have any Freon in it, so I just removed it. So for now, I really want to just, I'm going to get a different compressor, one of the modern ones, and put on here, but after the car gets running, obviously. So for now, I'm just trying to get the brackets set. So basically, there's nothing holding on this on, but that little bolt going through there, which is part of the power steering bracket that doesn't need to be touched. So basically, try to keep your screws in order. We have the mystery screw, not sure where that came from. The two upper adjusting bolts and the nut that went on this pin. and the nut that goes right there to hold on this AC bracket. So now I can take that off. All right, that's the beast. Very heavy. So there's a couple things going on here. This needs to go here. This is part of that because it had headers on there and I did not like the headers. They touched everything. They're just wonky, so I'm going back with factory. So this is the factory bolt that belongs here, which is kind of funny because I lost it. So the thing is, when I put this back in here, it's going to move this again. So yes, I am going to work this, but once this is there, that's a fixed point. You can't really move it. So then all of this is going to be corrected with this. So I'm not sure. I think it goes on like that, but it can't because these two have to line up. So I don't understand how that goes together. Maybe it goes like that. Maybe those don't line up. No. Those obviously line up pretty close. May have to find a picture of how this goes on. Well, I definitely believe it goes like that, which definitely doesn't look like those particularly line up straight at all. Going this way. So I guess I'm just gonna have to go for it and try it and make the discovery, and that will help the next person. Well, getting some pictures or videos of this is just doesn't seem viable. So even though I've looked on eBay several times just now, I believe that goes like that. So it's going to sandwich that compressor in between there. The problem is I don't understand why they would have put a bracket instead of just giving you something that mounted like this, square, when it goes like that. You know how I feel about that. And there does show a spacer, but it shows the spacer in the picture on the outside, not on the inside. So I'm going to go to the store and get 2 bolts to fit this, because if I can just get one of these in here, figure out how it goes, I mean, that would make the most sense. But all the pictures show this, and this leading side shows that it goes like this onto the compressor because it's the 2 flat sides. So I'm going to go get a bolt to, at a minimum, mount this one in there so I can try it, and then we'll sort out the space and the bolt. I'm going to get 2 bolts and some spacers, washers, just so I can put it together. But a spacer, a real spacer, is very expensive. Well, expensive as in $5-6 for one piece. I wish I had a way to measure that distance and get the correct spacer. Alright, that's what I ended up with. So basically it looks pretty close, but I can also see that it's a little off center. So if I would take one of those washers out, that would pull that a little closer, I believe. But it's also attached as part of this alternator. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen this and take one washer out because this, you know, looks pretty close. The lining up of this and that look pretty close, but you know, when you're looking at it, but I definitely would like to have that centered, because I believe since this is a fixed bracket, everything has to be off of that. So it was kind of weird that it did have a little bit of space when I tightened that down flush. I kicked that out. So I may take one of these washers out and put one of those washers in, but for the fun of it, I think I'm going to test fit this pump and see where it fits. All right, I believe this is close, but close is only good, I guess, in horseshoes. So I can't get this to line up, so it definitely needs to go that way. So if I take that washer out, that should slack that up enough to hit this. Now the other thing that I don't believe, I mean, I don't really know how I'm looking at it, but I don't know if it's square, and maybe I should take that bolt out and square this flat up first and see what needs to be. All right, took out 2 washers there. I don't see a real effect of that. Maybe I need to take out 1 more. I mean, because it is only theoretically supposed to be that wide. Maybe a washer on the side of it. Well, I am going to try and test fit it again. We know this is not right because it's not even bolted in there. So it's basically got 1 bolt for this. So I feel like you'd have to trim this to square this up. So may not be able to put this one in there. All right, now I got all the bolts attached. That is so close. Tolerance is tight. This one, if I push down on this bracket, it pretty much goes in. Now I see that there's a bolt hole there, and for some reason the bolt isn't in there, but I think the problem is these aftermarket valve covers are what's hooded on this AC bracket, because if I look close there, it's not touching there, and it's not touching there, it's touching there. So these aftermarket valve covers, crap. So I am going to put the belt on, tighten that up, put that on there, and move on to the next fun project. All right, one of these is the water pump, power steering water pump bolt goes there. Problem is this belt all loosened up, and this one's not on the thing, so I feel like I'm going to make a quick attempt to tighten that power steering, but if I can't, since I still have this loose, I need to take it off so I can tighten that power steering pump. But nobody's going to take off the AC to tighten up a power steering pump. That's silly. All right, for now, that's the best I can do. I tighten up that bolt for the power steering pump. Basically just pulled it from right here, but it needs to be tighter. But for now, it's good enough. Needs to be a little bit tighter. The AC belt's pretty dang tight. It has the nut right there. Has a swivel holder there, and the other last nut right there. So good enough for me for now. Move on, put this thing back on there, just so we can start the engine and all that fun stuff that I want to do. And oh, that's good. Found out where the fine thread bolt went into the AC, so that's good news. All right, there's the completion of that back together with the headers on. Got the bolt. I'll move on to the next fun project. What's not going to be fun is working down here trying to get some spark plug wires and stuff on that now. That's why people disconnect the AC. They don't want to mess with stuff. It stopped working, they just take it off. But anyhow, moving on to the next project, which is the brake piece, the brake bracket, and the starter bolts that I'm pretty sure, and I'm not sure if I've lost, but probably have by now.